Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cassandra Crawford Sigler. I understand that a lot of people were running a little behind in getting lunch, so I'm going to wait and see how many people we have join us before we get going on our discussion today. All right, well, it looks like we've got some students who have joined us, Julie. So I think we're gonna go ahead and start having a little bit of a discussion. So again, some of the students may have seen me in this last presentation that we did a little bit ago, but if you haven't met me already, my name is Cassandra Crawford Sigler. I am the career coach for health sciences and pre-health professions. So we work in Hardesty Hall on the second floor. We're known as Career Services, Kane Careers, Center for Career Development and Professional Engagement. So if you are interested in a career in health professions, health sciences, pre-health professions, I will be your career coach the entire time that you're here at the University of Tulsa. I have today here with me Julie Grimmett. Did I get it right?
You did, yes.
Okay. And I'm going to give her the opportunity to introduce herself and tell about her journey at TU and why she chose it and what her profession is. And we're just going to kind of have a little bit of a back and forth discussion. And we're just going to kind of talk about the benefits of being a student at TU and kind of go from there. So Julie, I'm going to toss it over to you and let you introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds great. Thank you. My name is Julie Grimmett, and I'm very happy to be here as an alumni of the University of Tulsa. Very proud to say that I am. I have been in the field of speech pathology for many years now. I actually graduated, graduated with a Master of Science in 1989. So it's definitely been a while, but it's been a great career, and thanks to my education and really great hands-on training at the University of Tulsa, I've been very, very fortunate to have a lot of great opportunities for a variety of job settings in my career, and just absolutely happy to answer any questions. And Cassandra, maybe tell me what you'd like me to tell you first.
Sure. So when you were a student here, how did you make your decision? What drew you to health sciences or health profession? What led you to make that decision as your career or your profession of choice?
I attended the University of Tulsa based on its reputation, and I had friends from my town, Kansas. Not a large city, but I actually had 3 people that had come ahead of me to the University of Tulsa, and 2 majored in engineering, and the other was a girl who majored in deaf education. My interest had always been, even as a young kid, in some type of health profession. Medicine was sort of my thought at the, for the most of my growing up years. But I did start out in the School of Engineering, just given that it's just such a good broad overall education, and I thought I'd maybe focus on biomedical engineering, or I would go to med school. But when I arrived at the University of Tulsa and got to know the health sciences college itself, and then because my friend had been in deaf education, there's the Mary Kay Chapman Center for Communicative Disorders and Sciences right there on campus. And of course I was intrigued, and she took me on a bit of a tour, and I thought, wow, speech pathology, audiology, that sounds interesting. And it's certainly, right aligned with what I was thinking in terms of a career in the health professions, just not necessarily as long to get my education, wouldn't take as long as med school. So I decided to take an intro class, and it was Intro to Speech Pathology and Audiology. And my gosh, I was just hooked. I really was. Just fascinating field, and I really didn't know a lot about it, but I decided to, continue taking the science classes and going into the speech pathology classes specifically, just to make sure I was learning enough to make a good educated decision, but not, staying too general so that I was going to graduate, in 6 years instead of 4 or whatever. So that's kind of how that started.
I do want to let the students know that are on here, this is being recorded, but also if you have any questions during this time, your microphones are muted, but there is the Q&A box. Please feel free to type those in. If you've got questions for Julie, you have questions for me, type those in and we'll answer those as we go along, or we can answer them at the end of the presentation. So obviously, just to give you all a little bit of my background, I want to make sure, since Julie's here representing her profession, I have 20 years of health professions experience. My area of expertise is nutrition. Specifically, I'm a registered dietitian, and I also have experience working in the laboratory. Previously worked as a medical technologist. So if you all have some questions, we'll be able to kind of field those as overall experts in health professions. Julie can give you all her experiences specifically as an alumni to TU, but we want to make sure that we answer any questions regarding your journey here and your interest in health sciences and health professions. So kind of wanted to plug that for sure. Let's move that forward now. So Julie, specifically, this is a really, really important one. These students have been in orientation. This is their last day, and I appreciate the fact that they're joining in right now. What would you say, what would be one piece of advice that you wish that you had known as an incoming freshman?
Gosh, I just think that I probably came in with a more narrow view of what I needed to accomplish. And again, I was kind of focused on medicine, and I remember having a conversation when I decided to take that intro class in speech pathology. I was kind of pretty set in my way, I think, or my thoughts, and I wish I wouldn't have been quite so myopic there, because luckily I was then introduced to other things and went the route that I'm so happy I did. But I think my mindset initially was, oh, I probably can't, get too far into this because I really have my focus on wanting to get to med school or what have you. And so I just would encourage everybody to really start their college career with an open mind and get as many experiences. Talk, of course, to your friends about what their classes are like, if they're majoring something completely different than you. But if it's something that, at least you want to learn a little more about, or you're interested in the slightest bit. Because like I said, I had no idea what speech pathology or audiology even was when I took that course. So, and here I am, 20 plus years in the profession and loving every bit of it. So
I think that that's really sound advice that we try to encourage students, especially ones, I wouldn't even say that. Students need to be, open to the experiences. You never have a clue whether the major that you choose when you come in with is going to be the major that you walk out the door with. So, but that's really, really good advice to be open to experiences and take a class maybe in something that you might be interested in and explore those options. So let's see, what organizations were you involved in while you were here on campus? And then on top of that, what did you perceive as being benefits from being involved in those organizations?
I think anything that, again, gets you socializing and networking in the university itself. For me, there were a couple of, well, one, I enjoyed singing, so choir there is amazing. And I was lucky enough to be able to be part of one of the, I think it was chorale, but then I also did like madrigal singers, something again I'd never done in my life, but just had the best time and met the greatest people. I did a lot. I wasn't involved directly in Greek life as a sorority, within a sorority, but there were just, it was a very welcoming kind of social group. And so I ended up just, making a lot of friends and having a lot of social experiences, I guess, that way. But it was like Mortarboard was another organization on campus that I was a part of. There are a couple honorary societies too, as you get going through your career, and the GPA puts you in, like, for initially, this is interesting, when I first started at Tulsa, the school, the nursing and the speech and audiology departments were within the School of Education. Then they moved and migrated to health sciences about halfway through my career. So there was a couple of education organizations that I was part of, and they'd have chapter meetings. And again, it wasn't something I thought, well, I'm not necessarily going to be a teacher someday, but at least I need to go and meet people. And I just, again, encourage, if there's something that you feel like intramural sports, that was fun too. I really hadn't played soccer. I was always, like track and softball when I was in high school, but a bunch of my friends said, well, we're going to just go ahead and do the intramural soccer, or, whatever. And I went out and played, and again, I met a lot of people and had a lot of fun. So it was just great that the university is big enough, but yet small enough that you can really get a lot of great experiences and meet a lot of people.
That sounds like a really good opportunity. It sounds like it's big enough, yet it's small enough that you'll walk away with a lot of really good networking opportunities and future relationships. So that sounds really exciting for these students as they're starting their journey here. So I'm going to tag team off of that and say, so have you maintained some of those relationships that you made here at the university, and how have those connections helped you where you are today?
I have maintained friendships more within just the core group of friends more so, but certainly I would have been able, or been welcomed to, and it would have been easy to connect with the girls. And mainly, honestly, our field of speech pathology is about 90% female. So I said, girl, so I don't think in my class, actually, we didn't have any males at that time. But now in the profession, because I've supervised many teams of therapists, physical, occupational speech, there's quite a few men out in the field too. And it's great because it really benefits the patient population too. Just depends on wherever you're at. I mean, I've worked in hospitals, head injury clinics, a specialty school for kids, but so really it's nice to have a mix of males and females in our profession. Mainly in physical therapy, you'd see more males, but it's definitely a great career for males. For speech pathology is a great career for men too. But back to just connecting. So friends that I've had then since I, started at TU, have been able to connect with. But the field itself is there's so many opportunities for work that hasn't necessarily been, something I've had to seek out as, oh, hey, fellow alumni of the TU speech pathology department, do you have any thoughts on jobs for me? Because all along in my career, I've always had plenty of opportunities for jobs wherever, which has been awesome, and I feel very, very blessed that that's the case. But I know that they're there if I need them. And the professors in my department were just amazing when it came to, getting you prepared for graduation and what the real world was going to be like. And they definitely were people that I used, whether it was just as a reference, or at some point, I guess it was maybe 5 or so years into my career, I'd worked in a hospital setting for that long and was looking at potentially getting a PhD. So that's when I reached back out, of course, to the professors at the university. And I even found how well known those people were, I mean, I knew they were teaching us great, and they had great credentials at the time, but as a student, you don't always necessarily appreciate that until you get out in the field. But I was doing a lot with the American Speech and Hearing Association at the national level, and kind of getting started with a PhD career, or path anyway. And boy, when I told folks that I came from the University of Tulsa, and I didn't even have to name some of the professors, they already knew them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty neat.
Well, you mentioned that, yes, that is true. We often tell our students how desirable they are, and I don't think that they really grasp that concept until sometimes they get that first job offer, or till they've been out in the field and they go to those interviews, and then the University of Tulsa's reputation really does speak very loudly for itself. So thank you for mentioning that. You did mention physical therapy. So since I have you there, would you mind, since you can speak a little bit about that, because I know how much interprofessional collaboration happens between speech pathologists, OTs, and PTs. Could you explain for the students who are on here who may not know about the professions, the differences in what speech pathologists do, especially in the clinical and then in the community setting, and then what PTs do and OTs do? So if they might be considering health professions and what direction they may want to go.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Yeah, all three are just fantastic careers, and we do work collaboratively together in just about any setting that you might come across. Physical therapists typically are the ones who are working on the gross motor skill relearning, if it's, you know, adults who that maybe have stroke. And with kids, it's you know, a lot of developmentally delayed children have difficulties with whether it's walking, which is ambulation, or coordination, their gross motor skills. And then occupational therapists are the ones that focus more on the fine motor skills. In fact, some occupational therapists then can go on to get special certification and in hand therapy. So there's so much, you know, that can be done with rehabilitation of the hand, but also again with little kids, there's just a lot of things that, you know, anything from preparing them to be able to write, to again, balance and feeding. I mean, there's just, these fields just have so many arms where you can go and find your niche, or jump around, because again, I know from my experience at the University of Tulsa, our department had the clinic right on campus, so we got a lot of variety of experience. They brought in any, you know, age really, from birth to you know, to geriatric. So we were even able to observe early on in undergrad work some of the clinic experts that were working with patients there, and that was really exciting. But they just really focused a lot on making sure that we got experiences across the board in the community in Tulsa. So whether it was a school setting or outpatient clinics, hospital settings, we were all just integrated out there. And there again is where you have the opportunity to then work with the occupational and the physical therapists to, whether it's rehabilitate someone, you know, even in the acute hospital setting, you're going into the ICU. Speech pathologists evaluate swallowing disorders. That's one of our big areas of expertise, and that opens up an entire really aspect of the profession. You could focus on that 100%, starting, you know, with working with radiologists in the suite where you're analyzing their swallow with the movable X-ray. There's fiber endoscopic evaluations of swallowing. ENTs employ speech pathologists. It's amazing. There's so many ways to use your career, your expertise, and your degree.
Those are really, thank you for explaining those. We've got a couple of questions that I think we'll field right now. So for the first question, it says, for underclassmen, what is your go-to piece of advice for someone who is interested in a health professions career?
Oh gosh, I think trying to integrate yourself into a volunteer situation, a position where you can actually get hands-on observation, certainly at first is, I remember that that was what they, they want you to come and watch, see if that's something that you're interested in. And then if, the volunteer opportunities out there, whether it's a hospital setting, outpatient clinics use volunteers, but then you can get a basic, kind of a certification to be like a rehab tech. And that puts you in the realm of actually being employed and working in these settings. Again, it takes a little bit of training and certainly the time commitment, but those can be offered at a part-time level. So certainly I would encourage any time that you might be able to look at volunteering, say you're interested more in pediatrics. I know schools are a little less willing to, but they have parent volunteers, but, certainly there's things that you can do to just be able to help in the back end of things in that setting too, that gets you a feel for what if that profession and that particular setting would be of interest to you.
I would agree. The experience is essential. I'm going to tag on to that. That's a go-to piece of advice. It's also knowing if that's what you want to do, that what are the requirements? Because most of these are professional programs, so it's above and beyond the bachelor's degree. So knowing what are the requirements to get into that program. A lot of the time it is experience or learning of some kind, having that volunteer experience in hours, and what are the grade requirements? What are the prerequisite courses? So being aware of those literally from the beginning so that you can start working towards those goals would be the other piece that I would say to be cognizant of.
Oh, totally agree. That's great. Yeah.
The next question that we have is, can you speak more about the sports and exercise science major? Is this anything that you have knowledge of, or do you want me to field this one?
You probably should, but I do have friends that are in that field, and certainly at this point, I think it's a bachelor's degree required, nothing further. Very highly competitive, but I know that anyone I am familiar with working in that setting really do enjoy those positions, working for teams, sports teams, etc. But that's about as far as my experience goes there. So go for it, Cassandra.
Sure. So obviously we offer this degree program at the University of Tulsa. We have a couple of different tracks that we offer here at TU. Now, I don't do academic advising, so if you have questions as far as your academic track, you'll need to discuss that with your academic advisor. But as far as guiding you in your professional career, where we're going to take that, if you decide you want to just get a job, then that's something that I'll help you with when you get towards that point. There are jobs to be had just if you want to go graduate with your bachelor's degree. We have a graduate who was working at TPS, so he was the exercise and sports coordinator for Tulsa Public Schools, and had a really great job. So that's something that can be done with that degree. Personal training, working in gyms. There's people who work in hospitals as the exercise coordinators. So that's kind of something that can be done just at that bachelor's level degree. The degree also has a track that you can take it into our Masters of Athletic Training program. So a lot of our students take that as a straight into our master's degree. That's if you really want to work with athletic training programs. So think about either wanting to work at the college level or the professional sports level, and you're wanting to work with elite athletes and their training. And then we have another track that goes with that, that is what we're talking about, specifically today, that pre-health professions programming. So if you want to go into occupational therapy, if you want to go into physical therapy, you want to go into medical school, that would be a route that can be accomplished through that degree program, where you get the sports exercise science degree, but then on top of that, you take the prerequisites to get into those health profession programs. So if I didn't answer your question, type back in the chat and let me know, and we'll take another stab at it. All right. That's all we've got for questions right at the moment in the chat box there, Julie. Let's see what else. So can you tell the students, what is something about your profession that you wished you had known in college?
Probably relatively only, honestly, one thing, because I felt so very prepared for my internships and then my first jobs clinically, and with my knowledge base of the actual disorders and treatment, evaluation and treatment of patients. But honestly, the only thing, and a lot of my colleagues in healthcare fields of occupational and physical therapy they say the same thing. And now I actually have a few friends who are professors at different universities across the country, and they are making sure that the thing that we all felt we needed more information about is being taught in the university classes now. And that's more about the billing side, the financial side of how does this therapy that we're doing and get paid for. And in and of that, a big piece of that is the Medicare system, Medicaid systems, all of that. We just, there's so much to learn even in a graduate program that just wasn't necessarily touched on back then, but I think it is now, because again, I do have friends who are saying they're including that in their curriculums in different universities, and it really helps to have that. That was a huge learning curve when I did get out of school. So, but that was it.
That was it. Other than that, you were ready to go.
I was.
I would agree with that as well. That was something that was not as touched upon whenever I was in school, but they definitely make that more of an emphasis now. So if you were to give advice to, if you have children, or if it was somebody else's children, if you were to give some children today advice about career or career preparation, what would that advice look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have had the privilege of having a few younger kids that are starting college now, or now are actually in the career, whether it's speech, OT, or PT, ask me, they were starting college and they weren't sure what they wanted to major in. So a lot of, it seemed like anyway, people were just saying, well, I'm going to keep it general, so I'm going to major in marketing or business administration, that kind of thing. And as they went down the path and was, interviewing and looking for jobs as they were getting close to graduating and having more difficulty, I think they realized that it would have made sense to look at a degree that has more of a particular skill set attached to it, whether it is engineering or any of the health professions. Once you finish your degree, you are immediately marketable out in the field. And I have found that across my career. I've never had to worry if I was going to have a job. I've never, been laid off or any of that, because there's just such a great demand. And when you have a skill set and you can, one, it's not like I've stayed directly in the path of being a clinical speech pathologist working with patients every day my whole career. I didn't necessarily need to, because once employers see that you know how to learn and you know how to acquire a new skill set, because you've acquired the skill set in your profession, in this case, health, they know that you can branch out and learn something else new, whether it's management, whether it's research. I mean, there's just, again, it was a very wise move on my part, and not everybody wants to make that narrow of a commitment maybe early on in their career in college as a freshman or sophomore. But I would encourage everybody to think a little bit, more closely at that once, at least by the time you get to the junior year level. So that way you really do have a little more time, because you could certainly switch at that point, and not still be in school for 6 years working on your bachelor's, but you know, hey, whatever works for everybody. I just didn't have the financial means to want to continue that long. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question.
That is. All right. We have a couple more questions. What would you say is the best part of your career right now?
I would say that being able to navigate change and having that flexibility, given that the profession has so many varieties of places and expertise that you can focus on. I just really enjoy the fact that I have flexibility in my life, and you know, would never feel that I, you know, well, one, if I felt like I was, which I never would be in this profession, bored, but if I was maybe tired of something, or I really wanted to try something new, I know and feel that I can do that anytime I've wanted to, and I have done it. And it's been a lot of fun to have that ability to be so flexible.
And then we're going to go to what's a skill that you would say a student needs to work on now in order to be prepared for health professions as well?
Maybe two things, because I really think it's important, again, to know how to learn. And a lot of kids that come to the University of Tulsa are very exceptional students as it is. And it very likely could be that some of the academic programs that you went through in high school are similar to what the University of Tulsa does teach you, that skill set of learning how to learn. And that will serve you very, very well. Critical thinking, being able to, you know, analyze any situation. But I think the second thing that is something to really look at focusing on, just so important in the world today, is networking in any and every way, and not just, you know, the social media thing, but truly getting into some professional organizations. Sometimes, you know, there's clubs at the university level, of course, that are going to be, maybe it's not that you want to be a biologist or go to med school, but the biology club. I mean, there's just a lot of opportunities for networking, and who knows, they may take field trips to different settings in the Tulsa area that it really would open a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities to get to know professionals out in the field of sports, education, whatever, as well as just, you know, a nursing program and getting to know a particular hospital setting. They're just, it really encourages you to network out there and volunteer as much as you could.
Very, very good advice. I'm going to have to fill this next one, I believe. Someone's asking, is sports science major the best route if I plan on going to medical school afterwards? What I will tell you is that at the University of Tulsa, there's a lot of different degree plans that you can utilize to go to medical school. They have some that are specifically set up that way. You can do exercise sports science pre-med track. You can do the biology pre-med track. There's psychology that you can use for pre-med. But to answer your question genuinely, you're here at the University of Tulsa to get the education that you choose to pursue. So I highly encourage you to choose what degree that you are interested in, because you're going to be successful if you study something that you are interested in. The pre-med stuff is above and beyond. It's a certain set of classes, core set of classes that you need to take to meet the requirements to get into medical school and to be successful to take the MCAT exam. How do you want to market yourself to be a candidate to apply to medical school? How do you want to get involved in research? What is your profession? How does your career look like after you leave TU? What do you want to get involved in while you're here? That's how I encourage you to choose your major and how to move your profession forward. So that's what I say about choosing your major and moving yourself forward, keeping in mind that you want to apply to medical school. So that's what I say for choosing your major to move forward that way. Um, all right, here we have a really good one, Julie. What advice do you have for staying motivated throughout school, and how do you stay excited for a future in health science?
Mm. I think always looking at what's cutting edge, what's coming, what's new in the field. I mean, we do that ourselves now in our uh, clinic settings, but certainly in school, because your professors are going to be bringing that kind of thing forward, but they might just touch on something. And if it sounds like, oh, whoa, what's AI involved in, in communication and relearning speech and language? What's that all about? Now with the internet, there's so much out there that you can just start, down any rabbit hole you want to learn more, but then find out, maybe in the greater Tulsa area, who is maybe working on some of that research, or who's trying some new cool equipment. There's been so much technology advancement in our career, in our profession. You see, if you have looked at rehabilitation itself, I mean, there's even, you can be a physiatrist as a medical school graduate, and you can specialize in rehabilitative medicine. That's a physiatrist, and there's folks in Tulsa that I would definitely encourage you to reach out to, Google them, find out where they're at, what they're doing. There's some of the coolest new robotic equipment that they're using to help people walk, and hand type stuff too, as well as what we're doing in speech with voice, MRIs, and anything you can imagine. I mean, just whatever seems to pique your interest. Really, I would encourage you to just, dive in deeper in that and find people who are either involved in it, or, speak to it, because it will keep you excited and motivated to always be learning.
I would agree. As a career coach and somebody who will hopefully be working with those of you who are interested in it, we encourage you to find your passion. And if you're ever having any questions, you can set up an appointment with us, and we have some resources and some tools to kind of help you if you've got any questions. If you are unsure, that's part of some of the things that we can do in the office to kind of help you sort out some of those questions, if there's any doubts or any struggles that you're having. So you can contact us on our email. It's canecareers@utulsa.edu. Let's see. Is there any advice for someone pursuing a sports specific path, for example, a trainer on a basketball team? So my answer for that, as far as advice, is I would say contact the advisors in Oxley, the sports exercise program, and people who are in charge of the Masters in Athletic Training. They're going to be your best resources here on campus. They have internships, they have job shadowing. There's opportunities to get involved with the athletics program here to get some hands-on practical experience. I mean, if that is your passion and your path, there's some opportunities there. You want to get on Handshake, which is our platform that we use in career services. We have opportunities that come up where there happen to be internships. Actually, I'm not going to say that they're going to happen, but previously we have had them show up with the Oklahoma City Thunder. So keep your eyes open for those kinds of opportunities. But the first place you'll want to start is with your program, and start getting to know your professors, and be asking where are these opportunities that I can get involved and have those experiences that Julie was talking about that are so essential. All right, that's the end of our questions for right there. I just have a couple of more for you, Julie. And first and foremost, I want to ask that this is something that I think is really important for the students to hear, because everything's like not always perfect. So how do you deal with stress as a healthcare professional? Like, what's the most stressful part of your job, and how do you deal with that, knowing that that's going to happen?
I definitely agree with you that it's important to deal with stress, and it happens in every profession. In healthcare, yeah, you're dealing at some level with people's lives, whether it's the quality of their life, but it could even be, an outcome of positive or negative. In my case, it's not typically life-threatening situations, but in the ICU it can be. And nurses and doctors certainly have that as well, and you maybe hear more about them with the stress and the burnout, because they are day in day out always right there with those people and their lives, whether again it's the quality of their life or an outcome that could go bad. That's more stressful than what I deal with as a speech pathologist. But when you're around that setting, you just have, you, I guess, rely on your own skill set, that you do develop a lot of this during your university schooling time, that because things aren't always going to go perfectly for you, and there's times when a class can be particularly difficult, and you're there independent of your family. Typically you're living on campus, and so you rely on your friends, but there's also support from the university level. We oftentimes, with our internships, I remember you're thinking, wow, is this something I can really handle? You're watching somebody in a pretty critically ill situation. So we talk to our professors a lot about those things, because they really have had those hands-on experiences, and they're able to guide students. So I would definitely encourage anybody, again, if you have a volunteer experience, that's the best time to really get in there and see, is this something I can handle? But in general, even a sports medicine career, you're going to have, you're going to have stress because there's time constraints, there's payment issues, or, satisfaction of your clients, and being able to just stay calm, look at the big picture, having a lot of the coping skills that really are critical for any part of your life. Really know that that being at the university is a great time to work on those things as well. And knowing that, the sun does usually rise the next day, and there's a new day, and it works out.
That's all really good advice. And thank you for sharing that. You kind of mentioned this already. I think this will be our last question, unless somebody comes up with another one. Like I said, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how would you say ultimately that TU has been beneficial in your career? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the two, if I just summarized it, the two biggest things is the fact that it's such a strong university reputation-wise overall. It's not just known for one or two specific majors or colleges on campus. It's the entire organization. It's just, again, I haven't come across, granted, somebody maybe in Virginia or Washington, D.C., if I said I graduated from the University of Tulsa, they might not necessarily know very well, who we are that far away. But I'll tell you, in the Midwest and in the out west here where I live, people do know it. And again, the education that was so sound that I received, from a knowledge perspective, from a, the clinical understanding, then going to the fact that they went above and beyond, in my opinion, to give us the experiences that we needed to learn what the real world job was going to be like. So having that clinic on campus, to me, was huge. And then the ability, like I remember saying to them, because I'm from Kansas, so I wanted to actually do an internship my last semester, part of that in Kansas City, Missouri, at a hospital there that had a great reputation, and they'd never sent an intern there before. But they're like, sure, let's work on it. Let's see what can happen. And I was able to go. And it was just, again, I just feel like the size of the school, the commitment of the university itself and the professors to really make sure that you're getting the education that you want and need to succeed out there has certainly proven to be very, very beneficial to me. Very grateful to have gone to the University of Tulsa.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Students, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I hope you found the information beneficial. Again, you can reach us at email at canecareers@utulsa.edu. I look forward to meeting some of you and speaking with you. You can find the recording on our website at canecareers.com. And Julie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon on Saturday. We really appreciated visiting with you. And students, again, thank you for coming. Looks like I've got one, and I've got to thank you very much. So we appreciate all of you this afternoon. So bye, everybody.